Very happy and pleasure to be here with 3AI. Thanks, Samir and the team putting together such a great sessions. It's relatively easy to start our session. Our previous speaker spoke about the value. I know we are trying to dive a little more deeper into that. Thank you, panel members, for joining this. I think we're going to talk about, I know we have seen in the previous slide talking about, everyone is talking about all the challenges and issues with Agentic AI, 95% failures or 100% failures, whatever. But I still guess everyone is in this room still genuinely believe it's going to work. I'm sure that's why you're all here. So we're going to talk about where is the value going to come from and what are we talking about efficiency. And we also talk about this problem solving, as you see in the heading of this entire session. In my personal opinion, humans are actually used tools in the past for problem solving. I think the tools were used for human problem solving. But now we're talking about agents. Agents have actually started looking at totally new problems are identifying, not necessarily what humans are even looking at the problems. So in that context, what does value actually mean and what does actually efficiency enhancement mean? So that's what we're going to touch upon. Okay, so maybe without dragging this, let me kickstart the conversation with Raghu. Maybe you just heard the conversation from a value realization about the platform, what you have and what you're trying to do. The past playbook we always familiar with is about first to define requirements, then build, then deploy, then at some point of time start measuring the value. But now we are talking about the agents are learning daily, adopting hourly, taking thousands of decisions in no time. When and where we will do value, and first of all, what do you define in a simple sentence the value realization in your opinion?
Thanks, Jit. Extremely happy to be in this August forum. Thanks, Amit, NK, and Kapil for organizing thing. So I wanted to connect something that happened yesterday with what we are going to speak. So I just want all of you to give a big round of applause for the Indian team chasing the largest ever score in the one-day international semi-finals. I think, I don't know how many of you saw, it was phenomenal. So that proves the value. If you have intent, outcome can be generated, right? Outcome can be achieved. So traditionally, we all measure input versus output. What AI and Agentic AI is doing is, it is directly correlating intent to outcome. That is a major difference. Benny, my colleague, spoke about adoption, consumption, and transformation. And we look at people, process, technology, and AI, how do you measure it? But the change that has happened that we have to be conscious of is the world has been going through a rapid transformation as far as AI is concerned, but we are still not in the matured stage. So what's happening is more or less experimentation and pilots. That is what is happening across the world. Most of the organization, with all due respect, obviously you have strategy, you do great things, but a lot of us have got infatuated by the capability and not the value that the capability is supposed to generate for the business. So what I mean is, when ChatGPT came or Soro came or any of the new technology is coming or AI is being launched, all of us are so happy about the potential that this particular technology is offering. We become a bit oblivious of what it can do to our business, right? So the traditional metrics there itself is a bit flawed in the sense, traditional metric is very structured. You have to go to the basics, no question asked. But when we are deploying millions of agents, okay, agents again, it is not mature. We have not come up to the hype curve. It is not still yielding great results. We are still experimenting. It's at least a year or two, 12 or 24 months away from telling that this is giving a short result. So you can have great technology deployed in terms of AI, great amount of investments, but it is very difficult for us to directly correlate to the outcome it is going to generate unless we change the basic parameters of how we want to measure it. So how do you measure it? You should focus on what an agent is doing which has replaced a human being, right? How do we focus on the outcome the agent is doing? Did we follow all the prerequisites as far as intent creation or context creation is concerned, right? So recently, I think a month or 2 months back, Rohan Murthy started workfabric.ai. I don't know how many of you are following, where he wants to deploy in partnership with Cognizant 10,000 context engineers, and it's very powerful because context engineer is a field where you deploy knowledgeful people who are going to understand what is the first and last mile of the work that is going to happen, right? But once you capture this in a system, how do you consistently measure this? And the metrics, I will not say, even from Actyv.ai, nobody in this world can stand up and say, I have the best solution which can measure everything. We are evolving, we are watching each of these technology that is coming new in a very close manner. We're identifying how it is actually changing the life of a process, life of a people, life of the technology which is already developed. When I differentiate technology in AI, I'm talking about your ERPs, your system of records, your system of transaction, your system of decision making, and the overarching solution or the solution in the core is AI. So methodologically, the way we see business is changing fundamentally. So the financial metrics also has to change the way you see a business. So you have to look at not only how much money you spend, what you got, you have to look at how did your people improve, how did your process improve, the old technologies, have you made it redundant, do you still have the same number of partners that is serving you, or is there an optimization in terms of number of partners, optimization in number of platforms that you do, and hence the outcomes that we are talking about.
Sure. No, I think that's pretty comprehensive in terms of defining the value. Maybe, Chiranjiv, any pointers you would like to add to that?
No, sure. We are looking at industrialization versus inferentialization, and I'll explain that. I come from the physics world, and I love the fundamentals of sciences. Of course, engineering is an output of the fundamental sciences of physics, mathematics, and statistics, right? I guess I'm the only physicist here. But the first thing that agentic AI systems, and I call it system, I'll define it during my course of discussion, is that the value realization that you actually talk about today is no longer static. It's the agentic systems redefine what we are saying or what we are doing in everyday life. Otherwise, it is just a productization, or either we are trying to define something which is driven by the product. So we are shifting from how measuring of the ROI post deployment to today what we look at a real-time inference. Because inference gives you outcomes. Outcome is what you measure at return of investment. You can call it return of investment or return of advertising investment, market mix models, or however that you want to quantify it. So it has to be measurable. Now, how do you make that measurable? Agentic AI systems, or agentic systems to be precise, agents, right, can uncover hidden correlations. It can uncover correlations like human beings, because human beings never explicitly define anything, right? And that becomes the most of the core, right? For example, demand drivers, or let's say pricing triggers, right? None of them are directly inferenced by anyone. You can look at an Excel sheet. We moved from Pythons of the world to SASs of the world, right? And defining technologies, right? We run it at the scale. That's important. And finally, and the most important thing, as Raghu said, to do inferencing, you need to understand or make the system understand the context. The engineering of the context actually defines how an agentic AI system will work. Otherwise, it is an automation.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense here. So maybe let me quickly switch the topic which we started. Value realization is one part of it, which in terms of helping to drive the more top line. But efficiency enhancement is actually often most talked about. Even in Gen AI world, everyone started talking about, oh, this is all productivity, this is all efficiency, while it is going to help the margin. Maybe if I can come to you, Muthu, in terms of understanding, in the past when we talked about efficiency, everyone had a simple definition, input and output. You do less input and drive the more output kind of a thing. Now we're suddenly talking about the agentic world. Input and output is not a reimagination, a fundamental reimagination happens. So in that context, what is efficiency enhancement means, and what is that we are seeing, and how people can practically start thinking about it by definition?
Hey, thanks, Jitendra. I think, as you rightly pointed out, the whole definition of efficiency itself is changing a lot. Initially, when we used to do a lot of, consulting or POCs or pilots, we used to start with something like a benchmarking exercise where we'll do discovery, we'll do feasibility, and we will move towards a certain outcome. That process itself has changed, and today with agents, there are a lot of possibilities that we are able to discover, and that is one major cultural shift that's happening, where the whole definition of value itself is very iterative, like how we are doing projects and solutions in an experimentative and iterative way. The whole definition and where we are moving towards from efficiency perspective is also changing. And there's also a new terminology that is there in the industry today after the agentic adoption started improving. That's called this cognitive ROI arbitrage, right? And in the previous the panel discussion, I think somebody spoke about cost arbitrage to courage and confidence arbitrage. I think it also relates to the whole cognitive ROI arbitrage, where you can look at how much the AI can, figure out what are the different possibilities, to how much we are able to adopt and bring the ROI from the discoverability that has happened with agents. So I think that is probably the fundamental shift to the efficiency problem that we are looking at.
Anything you'd like to add, Satish?
Yeah, so I would like to add one thing slightly different from what Muthu mentioned. It's still output versus input, okay? But in the past, we had output as more of a static thing. And now the output, the boundaries are shifting, and it is becoming more responsive, it is becoming more iterative, and it is more coherent with the current situation that you are in, right? So if you consider this, you definitely have to account in terms of the efficiencies that are gained. Maybe a portion of the budget could be, used for calculations of that. The other part is, of course, the amount of exploration paths that you are doing, the number of hits that you might have while discovering new value propositions. What is the amplification that you get from these value propositions also? That also adds to the factor. How much actually goes in terms of the investments, in terms of the human techno ecosystem, in terms of the continuous learning that is actually has to be there. And also the risk assessments also, right? In terms of, what could be the problems that you could be having, how much you are bound to lose if there is a wrong decision that is going to be made. So what I see now, the focus on efficiency is there. What we are actually seeing, there is a blurring of boundaries in terms of what efficiency is versus the return of investment, etc. But I still see that fundamentally the formula is the same. But it has to become more contextual, and then it is bringing the organization more together, and as well as all the factors. So it's a kind of a miniaturization of how the corporate works, but to a particular agentic system. It is bringing all of these meshes together.
Got it. So maybe output itself is moving target with a significant different way to measure. Okay. So maybe, Raghu, if I can come back to you, just picking up on the same topic, the inputs and outputs and value realizations we're talking about. In a way, value realization is always talked about. It's nothing new about from agentic AI we are doing. But historically in the legacy systems, or what we built in the past systems and all, the value realization versus what we are talking about looks like there is a difference, right? Not just what we're talking about, hyping what it is, but what is the realistic. Is there a simple way people can think about when they go back? These are the set of things we are measuring in the past when we talked about value. But now when agentic AI implementation happening, what is fundamentally different, or maybe the new metrics or additional metrics we should start measuring? I know broadly you talked about adoption, consumption, but is there anything else more specific you would like to bring it to the notice of the audience here?
Yeah, I think great question. So like I said, I always believe the fundamentals are always going to remain the same. But what's happened is we have reimagined the way the world is today. Be it business world, be it personal world, B2C, B2B, we have reimagined it entirely. Let's take an example of performance appraisal that happens in any organization. How many of the people here would do their self-performance appraisal and their leadership does appraisal? Can you just raise your hands? How many of you do it? Great. I'm a personal believer, once in 6 months or once in 12 months, 30 minutes exercise can never do a justice to what you are as a human being, right, in an organization, right? So that's the way the world used to be. Let's reimagine and see to Jit's question. In today's world, we are ensuring that most of your critical job role aspects is divided, and we are supplementing and complementing that with Agentic AI for you. So it's the human being, the individual, say for example, it is Muthu and Raghu are supposed to do a particular role in the team, and we are doing the role, plus we are also supplemented and complemented with 4 more agents. And these are all happening real time, and you have enough technologies in AI to measure what Muthu is doing in a day, what Raghu is doing in a day, not only the time tracking, but the depth of what you are doing. So when that is happening, why can't the appraisal happen instantly if you are going to breach what you are not supposed to do, okay, rather than waiting it for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 12 months? Do you even need a human supervisor when you have defined a particular law of the game or rule of the game as to how to do a work and what does a performance appraisal constitute? The work days of the world, NetSuite, Oracle, SAP, great. But why can't it give an instant feedback telling, hey Raghu, you are not doing good, Muthu has done a great job. So there is something that you have to focus on, not only on a qualitative, quantitative, but also on the softer aspects, because you get a real-time insight. So this is exactly what is the difference. We are not going to replace the older system. The older system was sacrosanct. It is the reason why all of us are here. But it is the AI layer that you apply at multiple level. Every single level that we could visualize, and we will keep visualizing, is where the AI layer is going to come, and it is going to reimagine the way that we are doing.
Yeah, and I think you touched upon a very interesting topic, because there are smiles in the panels as well as in the audience. Not only that, maybe the agents also will have an evaluation system, and agents and humans will be evaluated in the same manner. But I think that's a good point to start from a value realization perspective. Maybe if I can come back to you, Satish, I think often we have seen in the past, right, when we started talking about autonomous cars to whatever, you come from a banking industry, whether it's a wealth management, lending, mortgage, and other thing. Now we are talking about thousands of agents eventually start helping to automate and faster decisions, because in the past we used to say about why does it take X amount of time for KYC, why does it take for a loan processing, can in the real time when you are in a shop your credit card limit can increase, can agents take care of all of that, right? But that sounds like a brilliant thing, but when banks had to deal with, I think the previous speakers also talked about, not just the data, but you need to also have regulatory compliances and many things. And agents are going to help in accelerating this. But what is the biggest worry about? Well, there is one side, there is a value, but there is another side about the regulatory. How the banks are thinking about it, and what are you implementing in general about yours, or even specific within the industry perspective?
Yeah, in a nutshell, if I can understand your question, it is more about the accountability assessment. No, so I was just thinking about an example where, say, you are driving a car, the car is autonomous. But then you do have the ability to put a brake or stop the engine altogether, right? And then the car goes and hits somewhere. So who's accountable for that? That's a question that you have to answer, because the car is driving of its own. So you could think about you could rather blame the makers of the car, or you could blame yourself also because you've not reacted on time, right? So actually what it takes is what we see is, it really takes a village to actually build this kind of an agentic ecosystem, right? And as I've said before, it is kind of a miniaturization of bringing the organization together also, as when we deploy these components. So right from the people who are the members of the board, in terms of the policies that they make, and what is the tolerance levels that they have with respect to the decisions, to the people who are the makers of the models, to the ones who are responsible for the data governance. It was also touched in some of the previous presentations, data governance, the ones who are responsible for the data, the drifts in the data, etc. The people who are responsible for implementing those agents in the system, as well as the ones who have those kind of kill switches, the people who can take decisions with respect to the overrides, etc. Right? So you have this entire set of ecosystem, and so when they come together to build the model, right? They have to come together in terms of ensuring there is a kind of an accountability also together. It is not at the external level, you can say that the organization is responsible for what has happened, but within the organization, you need to have a clear playbook as to who is taking accountability for what, etc. Right? So you could actually come up with a kind of a playbook. Say if it is some kind of, there are some decisions that have been taken incorrectly, say with respect to lending, and it has created huge problems. Then you would rather look into what is the policies, right? Whether it is within the existing thresholds, etc. And then you would actually, if it is no, then you would actually go to the next step in rather identifying whether there are any problems with the data that is coming in, whether those drifts related to the data has actually caused this issue, etc. So you could actually go through these step by step and then identify where the problems are, and then we can distribute. And these things have to be agreed upfront. But at the same time, with the lessons that are learned, there should be some periodic audits where this is recalibrated on an ongoing basis and then it is improved, right? I think we cannot have a perfect solution here, but what we see is that we need to adapt with the times, and we need to adapt in this kind of an ecosystem where humans and agents are working together. I don't like to see agents in isolation. Agents and human beings actually work together, and together there's a kind of a joint accountability to that.
I totally agree with that. In terms of humans and agents working together to solve problem. So maybe Muthu, if I can come back from just picking up from what Satish ended with, you may be deploying many programs and projects for customers and doing the same thing. And as we go through this, most of the companies now we spoke about in the previous session also, process knowledge is there. And then there is a lot of tribal knowledge and workflows and many other pieces in organization. It's not just the data, right? Now, when we start doing this Agentic AI, the value realization is so exciting, but at the same time, what are the risks and processes if you think about? Are you more worried about agents are going to learn very fast all those bad behaviors, bad context, and actually do something even more faster for you to catch up? Or more worried about humans are not allowing agents to be successful because they're worried about the entire knowledge they have is a shallow or dysfunctional. They're all there in the jobs just because they're there. So, I mean, what is that you see the value realization planned versus value realization not happening in today? I mean, I'm sure you must be seeing some amount of resistance. Where do you see this is going?
That's a very interesting question, Jitendra. And in my perspective, I think both of them are interrelated, right? Now, if we look at, agents looking at bad patterns, let's take some examples, right? Now, most of the enterprises that, I work with, they start the meeting or, the first meeting itself would be that, our organization is very complex, right? Now, this is like a common language that we see across almost every enterprise, right? Now, are organizations and enterprises complex, or some parts of that are dysfunctional, right? But nobody will acknowledge that, when a process or something that's not working out, as humans, we tend to create juggards. Now, that is where I think we will probably have to look at when something is dysfunctional or something was not working and you want the technology to work for it. So we need to be able to, differentiate between what are the human juggards that we have created in the process versus what is the real expertise from humans that we really want the agents to learn. I think if we can solve this problem, I think both of them will get resolved, right? The first one, agents will not learn from the bad patterns that we as humans have created. And of course, the friction for the humans to adopt AI will probably, naturally solve for it, because as humans, as we start seeing value, we will eventually try and adopt. There will be friction in the beginning, but once people start seeing how it can change their lives, adoption will happen automatically.
Okay, now I think like the jugaad, human jugaad getting into agent jugaad, so maybe we'll deal with it as we go through. Now, maybe just coming back to you, Chiranjiv, part of your job, you may be helping organizations in, solving problems, solutions and others. Historically, strategy and consulting is about first you put blueprints and then you deploy and then you bring value. But actually, thanks to Agentic AI, it looks like everyone is doing a lot of things within the organization. And then the question coming about value cannot come with these bits and pieces, right? I think we spoke in the previous sessions as well. I mean, then it feels like some kind of a catch-22 conundrum. Do you need to start experimenting and bring value, or do you need to start putting some strategy and blueprint and value? How do you go about it? I don't think in the previous transformations, whether it's ERPs and others, we didn't had this level of acceleration. So any thoughts from there? How do you think about value?
Sure. Where we are living today is not innovation, it is evolution. Generative artificial intelligence and agentic AI systems, whatever that we call it, this generation will derive and drive things from here. And that's why people are, though there is a lot of hype, but still there is an aspect of agentic general intelligence. And Muthu, the way she said, jugaad, that's called common sense. And common sense is what we all are up to. Do we decide, should we kill the cat on the road or the human being? We definitely will decide to stop the car. That's how autonomous systems were developed. Will you change the lane? The way that you change the lane in America is the way that you do it here. Of course, we don't even change the lanes here, right? So we do everything under the sun. So C5I is a primarily data organization. It's been there for the last 25 years, has been collecting data, consumer research, market research was the DNA of this company, right? So the first thing that we went into is to understanding the data, right? We have a unified data platform. And the first root cause that we went ahead and solved is out of 1 million tables that you have, because most of the people don't even get to the point that you just attach a Databricks data table, right? Or a SQL table and you start generating stuff. But can I scan 1 million tables and go to the data owner? Because that's the biggest problem. No, none of the data owners want to write the metadata for a table. We just create it and save it because we are human beings. We open the table and understand how it works. Machine cannot understand that. That's human psychology. So we went ahead and understood and created the large language or tiny reasoning system which can actually do that. That's the DNA of the fundamental. We have, second example, we have something called endeavours, it's a product. The first thing is context generation. We have so much of context, as in the first thing that evolutionized during generative artificial intelligence is marketing and sales. Of course, it has most of the budget in most of the companies, other than supply chain, right? So, the first and the most important part is you don't generate Ghibli art in your company to do the ad for your product. Of course, you might be, but you would be going through your brand guidelines. Whom would be your influencers who will talk into? How would you get into which kind of work that you would be doing? What would be your brand presence? You would do an entire marketing gimmick. So the agentic AI system has to learn. This is how productionally scale things work. That's called the jugaad.
Okay, thank you, Chiranjeev. I know we're at top of the hour, but like any other panel session, maybe if I can bring some kind of a quick point of view from each of you. Imagine 2 years down the line, you're in the same room, okay. What are you going to be most surprised about other than ORR? If I have to think about from an agentic AI perspective, what do you guys, each of your perspective, maybe one-liner from you?
So maybe I can take this first. I think in some of the recent reports from MIT, you see that there's a high failure rate with usage of agents. So there is nothing to be surprised about because the human element is what is actually missing there, right? So we need to identify for what we should be able to use agents vis-a-vis where the human interference is required in terms of human in the loop, human on the loop, etc. And I am a big advocate of presence-based leadership where you are able to build that kind of an internal coherence and that can actually span into systems also. Because when you work with agentic systems, there is a kind of an embedment that happens between leadership and governance also. Because you need to move towards a governance first leadership there. And so it automatically, so it ensures that these things are sort of embedded and interpenetrative. And in the process of doing so, there needs to be not only the fact that ethics is distributed, but also it has to be emergent from this human technology kind of symbiotic relationship that emerges there. So I would just like to add that.
Sure. One liner from you.
See, agentic AI is like a GPS without a context, right? So what you need to do is, it knows how to move, but it does not know where to go. That's simple as that. So what that means, you rewire the understanding that even if you are in an enterprise, you're GCC, right, or you are consulting for somebody, that is the key thing. So you rewind, rewire, and re-engineer. That is the motto and the principle that you should be driving Agentic AI system is. Otherwise, it's just an automation.
I think from my perspective, it's about the human adoption, and as a technology optimist, I think we should be a little more accommodative of the AI errors for the next few months. And once we start seeing value and have the mindset shift from what to expect from technology, I think things are going to be much, much better.
Yeah, three things. One is 2 years, so 2027 or 2028, the top 10 economies of the world, GDP-wise, is going to be USA, China, India, then probably OpenAI, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, and Meta, right? These are going to be the trillion-dollar economies, then UK, and so forth. Two, in 2027, 2028, I think we're all going to forget a bit of agentic AI. We're all going to speak about quantum intelligence and not artificial intelligence, okay? AI would have been commoditized. Everybody and the maximum amount of startups in the world will be QI. AI will be en passé. AI is going to be the one that is going to create the room for quantitative intelligence. And finally, the session's name will not be art of problem solving. It will be science of problem solving with the agentic AI.
Okay, wonderful. I know we have a great knowledge, we have an optimism, and then we have a process and frameworks in place, and there is a lot of experience. And I'm sure a couple of years down the line, we'll genuinely see, not surprised, good results, rather good surprise. Thank you so much.
I guess.
Thank you so much, folks.